Hey folks, welcome back to Stoic Talks. So you want to attract someone, maybe someone new, or maybe someone who's grown distant. Whatever the case is, here's what I can see from here. You acting like a doormat. Why? Because you love them, right? And in your mind, you're thinking you'll do anything to make them see your worth. Anything to make them miss you. Anything to make yourself more attractive in their eyes. But let me ask you something. Do you really think that's working? You want to become attractive? Then why are you acting like a doormat, allowing them to use you, allowing them to walk all over you, allowing them to treat you like you're nothing? Why, my friends, do you think being their puppet makes you desirable? Do you love the person you've become? A puppet on strings, dancing for their attention? How can you expect someone to see your worth when you've thrown it away? You've lowered yourself to the point where they don't even have to respect you. And let me say this straight. If they're not seeing your worth, have you taken a good look at your own? Are you seeing your true worth? Or have you resigned yourself to just being someone's puppet? Someone's doormat for them to step on whenever they please? Because from where I'm standing, it's clear as day. They don't love you, they don't respect you, and they sure as hell don't miss you. Why? Because you're acting like you don't deserve better. And the truth is, if you keep this up, you don't. So what are your options? How are you going to attract someone when you've given them every reason to walk all over you? There's only one way forward. You have to move away. You have to reclaim your power, take a step back, and show them, no, show yourself that you deserve so much more than this. Because if you stay stuck in this cycle, chasing after their attention, you'll never get it. You have to create distance. You have to move away, and that's when everything starts to change. So this is the time to accept this challenge. Today is the day you stop dancing to their tune. So accept this challenge to step back, to value yourself, and to command attention without seeking it. So accept this challenge. Commit to your own growth, to your own self-respect. Say it with me, I refuse to dance. And to let me know that you're with me on this, that you truly accept the challenge, go ahead and drop it in the comments. I refuse to dance. Let them see where you stand. But more importantly, let you see that this is the moment you take back control of your life. Ready to command attention without seeking it? Let's get started. What happens when you move away? Music. Imagine for a moment that your presence is like sunlight, constant, warm, always there. People bask in it, enjoying its warmth, but after a while, they stop noticing. They take it for granted, assuming it'll always be shining, always there for them to enjoy. Now, what happens when that sunlight fades, when it slips behind the clouds? Suddenly, the warmth they were so used to is gone. They feel the chill, and in that chill, they start to miss what they never fully appreciated before. That's exactly what happens when you pull away. You become the absence they can't ignore. It's strange, isn't it? The more you were there, trying, giving, constantly making sure they knew how much you cared, the more invisible you became. Your presence became a given, an afterthought. But the moment you step back, the moment you remove yourself from their world, you become a mystery again. You create distance, and in that distance, they start to remember. They start to feel the absence of what you brought into their life. And here's the kicker. They don't see your value because you've changed. They see it because you're no longer there for them to take advantage of. So why do you become more attractive when you move away? Because you're no longer the constant, the predictable presence they've grown used to. You've become the absence they can't stop thinking about, and in that absence, your worth shines brighter than ever before. But folks, let me be real with you. It's not going to happen overnight. This isn't some magic trick that works in a day. It's a process, a whole journey you're about to embark on. Before you take any steps, you need to be fully aware of the entire process. It's like seeing your own future, preparing yourself mentally and emotionally for what's coming. That's how you truly win this. So stay with me, because this video has a lot of wisdom to unfold, and trust me, we're just getting started. And before we dive deep into it, if you love what we're doing here, helping you take back your power, please take a second to help us by hitting the like button under this video. When you do this, it not only helps us reach more people who need this, but it also strengthens our community of people committed to becoming the best versions of themselves. Now, let's dive into exactly how this process works and the phases you'll go through when you decide to move away. Stay tuned, because this is where everything changes. Phase 1. The fear of losing them for good. The moment you decide to move away, the first thing that grips you isn't power, it's fear. A deep, gut-wrenching fear that if you step back, if you stop chasing, they'll forget you. You're terrified that if you're not constantly present, they'll move on, find someone else, and never think about you again. This fear starts to creep into every thought, every decision. It gnaws at you late at night, whispers in your ear that maybe you've made the wrong choice. You've invested so much energy into this connection that pulling away feels like cutting off a part of yourself. The fear is real, and it's heavy. It can paralyze you. This fear is dangerous because it tricks you into thinking that the only way to keep them is by staying close, by constantly showing up, by continuing to give them all of your energy. And that's what keeps so many people stuck. This desperate need to be seen, to be noticed, to be valued. It's a trap. You've been living in it for far too long. Remember where you were standing just before you decided to move away? You were trying everything to attract them, like a puppet on strings, doing whatever it took to stay in their orbit. But let's be honest, was it working? No, you were running yourself into the ground, and they were barely noticing. So here you are, face to face with that fear of losing them for good, and it's urging you to go crawling back to them. But let me remind you why you're doing this in the first place. You're not walking away because you don't care. You're walking away because you care too much about yourself. You're doing this to become the person who truly deserves respect. A person who lives in fear doesn't command respect. You know that, and deep down, that's why you made this choice. You've already taken the first step by moving away, and that means the process has begun. What you don't see right now, in the middle of your fear, is the shockwave you've already sent their way. While you're sitting here questioning yourself, doubting every move, they're sitting there in shock. They're confused. They don't understand why you've pulled away. And let me tell you, it's hitting them harder than you think. They've grown so used to having you at their beck and call, to you always being there, that your absence is like a slap in the face. They might not show it right away, but trust me, it's rattling them. Now, how do you deal with this fear? You've got to remind yourself that you're not doing this to play games. You're doing this to reclaim your worth. You have to hold steady. Fear is going to try to convince you that walking away was the wrong choice, but you already know what staying got you: nothing. The only way forward is through. You can't go back to who you were, the one constantly trying to prove their value, constantly chasing validation. That version of you wasn't working, and you know it. So how do you come out of this fear? You shift your focus. Stop worrying about whether they'll miss you, whether they'll come running back. Focus on why you're doing this, for yourself. This fear is a signal that you're stepping into something bigger, something more powerful. It's the discomfort that comes with growth, with breaking free from old patterns. Embrace it, because it means you're on the right path. Here's the truth. The moment you stop feeding into the fear, it starts to lose its power. And as your fear fades, their shock grows. They're left sitting there, wondering what happened, questioning why you've changed, and they're going to start feeling that loss. You were always there, and now you're not. And that absence is something they can't ignore. But here's the key. Don't let their shock tempt you back. Don't mistake their confusion for love or validation. You're not here to give them easy answers anymore. You're here to build yourself into someone who commands respect, not someone who lives in fear of losing it. And let me tell you something else. This fear you're feeling, it's temporary. What's permanent is the power you gain when you push through it. Every moment you resist the urge to run back, every second you hold your ground, you're getting stronger. You're teaching yourself that you are enough, that you don't need their attention or validation to feel whole. You're walking through the fire now, but on the other side of this, you'll be untouchable. Here's your affirmation. I can fight this fear. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Once and for all, let them know that you're no longer ruled by fear, that you're moving forward with purpose. And remember, we're just getting started. There's more to this journey, and each step brings you closer to the person you're meant to become. Stay with me, because what's coming next is even more powerful. Phase 2. The second guessing begins after Phase 2. Fear. You've taken that first step away, a new battle begins, the war inside your mind. You start to second guess everything. Was this the right move? Should you have pulled away, or have you just made a colossal mistake? You sit there, replaying every moment in your head, questioning whether you've pushed them too far, whether they'll even care that you've pulled back. You wonder, what if they don't even notice? What if I've just made it easier for them to forget me? It's a mental tug of war that's relentless, and it's all too easy to get trapped in it. Your mind starts playing tricks on you, feeding you thoughts like, maybe if I reach out just once it'll fix things. Maybe if I send a quick text, they'll remember I'm still here. But that's exactly the trap that leads you back to the same place you were before, chasing them, waiting for their response, waiting for them to decide if you're worthy of attention. And let's be real, you've been there before. You've sent those messages, checked your phone obsessively, waited for hours, sometimes days, just to see if they would respond. And when they finally did, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like you were back to square one, stuck in a cycle of needing their validation just to feel okay about yourself. So, ask yourself, has that ever worked? No. It only made you feel more desperate, more dependent, and more out of control. Right now, in this moment, as the second guessing starts, you're facing a pivotal decision. You can either push through the doubt, or you can slip back into your old habits. The fear of losing them starts to blend with the temptation to reach out and fix things. But here's the hard truth. You're not here to fix anything. You're not here to convince them to see your worth. That's not your job anymore. Second guessing is part of the process. It's a natural response to stepping away from something that's consumed so much of your energy. You've poured so much into this connection that moving away feels like you're abandoning everything you've worked for. But here's the thing. If you keep second guessing yourself, if you keep wondering whether you should reach out, you'll never break free. You'll stay stuck in that loop where your self-worth is tied to their response, to their attention. At this point, they might not have noticed yet. Maybe they're still going about their life, oblivious to the fact that you've started to pull back. And that's where the doubt creeps in the hardest. You start thinking, If they haven't noticed by now, will they ever notice? Have I already lost my chance? But here's what you need to understand. They're not going to notice overnight. This isn't an instant reaction. People who have taken you for granted for so long aren't going to immediately feel the impact of your absence. But make no mistake, they will feel it over time. They'll start to realize that something's missing, that the person who was always there, always available, isn't there anymore. It's just going to take longer than you expect. That's where the second guessing can destroy you. It pushes you to act prematurely, to fill the silence that they should be feeling, to break the distance that they should be grappling with. Don't let it. Instead of giving in to the doubt, this is where you have to lean into your own strength. You have to remind yourself of why you're doing this. You're not pulling away as some tactic to make them miss you. You're pulling away to reclaim your own power, to step out of the cycle of dependency and into a place where you control your own worth. Every time you second guess, you're giving them back the power to define you, and that's the very thing you're trying to escape. For those trying to attract someone new, the second guessing is just as real. You pull away, maybe after a few conversations or a couple of dates, and the doubt kicks in. Did I come off too strong? Did they lose interest? Should I reach out and try again? You start thinking that maybe, just maybe, if you make the first move again, they'll respond. But here's the truth. If someone is interested, they'll come to you. Your absence will speak louder than any message you could send. And if they don't come back, then you know they weren't worth your time in the first place. In both cases, whether you're in a relationship or trying to attract someone new, the second guessing is your mind's way of trying to cling to the past. It's your fear talking, not your power. The temptation to go back to what's comfortable, to what you know, is strong. But comfort zones don't lead to growth. They lead to stagnation. And right now, you're in the middle of a transformation, a shift that's going to change the way they see you, but more importantly, how you see yourself. To fight through the second guessing, you have to remember that you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you. Every time you resist the urge to reach out, every time you stay strong and maintain the distance, you're building a new version of yourself, one that doesn't need someone else to feel valuable, one that's in control of their own story. Here's your affirmation. I trust my journey. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know you're not second-guessing your worth anymore. You're in control, and you're on a path that leads to something greater than chasing after someone else's attention. And remember, this is just phase 2. There's so much more to come. Stay with me, because the next phase is when you'll begin to feel the unexpected calm that comes with embracing this power. Phase 3. The unexpected phase 3. Calm after battling through the fear and second guessing. Something unexpected happens. A calm begins to settle in. It doesn't hit you all at once, but gradually, you realize that the world hasn't crumbled because you stepped back. They haven't come running back yet, but guess what? You're still standing. And it's in that moment, as you continue living your life without them as your focal point, that the fear starts to lose its grip. The noise in your head quiets down, and you begin to feel a strange sense of peace. You've survived without them, and that realization alone starts to shift your entire perspective. While you're finding this unexpected calm, where are they? At this point, they're still in confusion. They're beginning to notice that something's different, but they haven't fully grasped it yet. They're not used to you being distant, to you not reaching out, and it's starting to eat at them. They may not show it, but that silence you've given them is starting to create a void. They're wondering why you've stopped chasing, why you're not as available, and that confusion is what eventually leads them to feel the loss more deeply. You see, people often don't realize the value of something until it's gone, and that process takes time. Right now, they're still in shock, unsure of what's changed. This calm you're feeling, it's powerful. It's the first sign that you're breaking free from the emotional grip they had over you. You've spent so long chasing their validation, their attention, that stepping away felt like losing a part of yourself. But as the calm sets in, you begin to understand something critical. It wasn't them you were afraid to lose. It was the version of yourself that depended on them. The version that thought you needed them to feel whole. And now that you've taken that step back, you're starting to see that you are enough on your own. That calm is the first taste of freedom, of reclaiming your emotional independence. For those trying to attract someone new, this calm hits differently. You were probably anxious about whether they'd notice you, wondering if you did the right thing by stepping back. But now, as you continue moving forward without constantly thinking about them, you realize you don't need their attention to feel good about yourself. The power you were giving them by constantly trying to press or engage them, you're taking that power back. And that calm is a signal that you're no longer ruled by anxiety about their response. This calm is the foundation of what's to come. It's the point where you start to reclaim your energy, your time, and your sense of self. You're no longer waiting on them to validate you, and that's when everything starts to shift in your favor. Here's your affirmation. I find peace within myself. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know that you're stepping into your power and finding peace without needing anyone else's approval. This is only the beginning. Stay with me, because the next phase is when the real transformation begins. Phase 4. Finally, they take notice. Notice after you've stepped back, battled through the fear, second-guessing, and found that unexpected calm, something interesting happens. They finally take notice. It doesn't happen in a grand, dramatic moment, but slowly, quietly, they start to realize that your absence is no longer just temporary. You're no longer chasing them, no longer reaching out, and suddenly the attention they took for granted is gone. And that's when it hits them. You're not there anymore. At first, they might not understand it. They may think it's just a phase or that you're playing hard to get. But as time goes on, they start to feel it, the space you've left behind. They begin to wonder why you've stopped being the constant in their life. Why haven't you texted? Why aren't you checking in? And slowly, their curiosity turns into concern. What's changed? Are you moving on? Have you found someone else? The absence that once felt insignificant now starts to gnaw at them. But here's the important part. You have to stand firm. This is just the beginning. It's tempting to feel satisfaction when they finally take notice, but don't fall back into old habits of reaching out or rushing to fill that void. They've only just started to realize what they're missing. If you give in now, you're telling them that your absence was temporary, and they'll go back to taking you for granted. At this point, they're starting to feel a sense of loss. They were so used to you being there, being available whenever they needed you, that they never considered the possibility of losing you. But now, with that silence, with your distance, they can't help but notice the void. This is the power of moving away. You create space for them to realize what they had and didn't appreciate. Now, whether you're in a relationship or trying to attract someone new, This moment is crucial. They're starting to take notice because you've shifted the power dynamic. You're no longer that predictable person they assumed would always be there. You're now someone they can't quite figure out. Someone who's moved out of their orbit, and that's when they start to crave your presence. This phase is key because it shows you that by stepping back, by reclaiming your power, you force them to see you again. They're noticing what they once took for granted. Here's your affirmation. They will see my true worth. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know that you're no longer invisible and that they're finally starting to take notice of the value you've had all along. But remember, this is just the beginning. Stand firm because there's much more to come. Stay with me. Phase 5. The moment of realization. They don't define you as time passes. Something even more powerful happens. You come to a profound realization. They don't define you. You've spent so much time seeking their attention, validation, and approval that it felt like they held the key to your self-worth. But now, after stepping back and creating distance, you start to see the truth. Their reaction, their acknowledgement, their presence. It doesn't determine your value. Whether they notice your absence or not, whether they come running back or continue to drift away, you are still enough. This moment is pivotal because it's not just about them anymore. It's about you. You've stopped waiting for their attention, and for the first time, you feel the freedom that comes with no longer relying on someone else to make you feel whole. You've been so focused on what they think, how they'll respond, and whether they'll miss you that you didn't realize the most important part of this journey, your growth. And while you're coming to this realization, they're feeling something completely different. The power they once held over you is slipping away, and they can feel it. The dynamic that used to put them in control, where they decided when and how they'd engage with you, has flipped. They're no longer defining your worth because you've stopped waiting for their approval, and trust me, that shift doesn't go unnoticed. Now they're left wondering why you don't seem to care anymore. They're starting to feel the distance more than ever because the power is no longer in their hands. You're not chasing, not clinging, not hoping for scraps of attention. You've started to reclaim your life, and the best part, you've realized that you were the one holding the power all along. You never needed them to see your worth. You only needed to see it for yourself. Here's your affirmation. I define my own worth. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know you're no longer relying on anyone else to feel valued, that you're stepping into your own strength and independence. And remember, this is where the real transformation begins. Stay with me, because the next phase is when everything truly shifts in your favor. Phase 6. The subtle shift in power. As you continue to reclaim your power and redefine your worth, something shifts quietly but unmistakably. This is when the power dynamic changes, and it happens without fanfare or drama. It's subtle, but the impact is undeniable. You're no longer chasing, no longer seeking their validation. And in that silence, in that calm, the balance of power shifts firmly in your favor. They start to feel it. They may not say it out loud, but they notice the difference. You're no longer the person who was always available, always reaching out, always ready to accommodate their needs. Now you're focused on yourself, on your own growth, and that independence makes you more magnetic. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer the same person they thought they had all figured out. This subtle shift in power isn't about control, it's about self-respect. By stepping back, you've shown them that your life doesn't revolve around them anymore. You've taken the time to build something for yourself, And in doing so, you've become someone they can't ignore. They're left wondering why you're not seeking their attention, why you seem so centered, so confident. The more you focus on yourself, the more curious they become. And that curiosity, that uncertainty about where they now stand in your life, is what pulls them in. The irony here is that you're not doing anything grand or dramatic. In fact, it's the very act of doing less, of stepping back, of not chasing, that flips the power dynamic. They feel the loss of control, and that makes them want to regain it. But now, the control isn't theirs to take. Here's your affirmation. I hold the power in my life. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know you've reclaimed the power that was always yours. This shift isn't about manipulating them. It's about empowering yourself. The more you embrace this, the more the dynamic changes in your favor. And we're just getting started. Stay with me, because the next phase is when the fear you once felt is reversed, and now it's their turn to feel it. Phase 7. The fear reverses. As you continue on this journey of reclaiming your power, something major happens. The fear you once felt now begins to settle in on their side. The tables turn, and the fear that gripped you at the start of this process is now their fear. They start to worry about losing you, about no longer being in control, about whether they've taken you for granted for too long. It's no longer you who is lying awake at night, wondering if they'll come back or notice your absence. It's them. This shift happens quietly at first. They notice that you're not responding to their usual tricks, that your focus isn't on them anymore, and it starts to bother them. At first, they might shrug it off, thinking you'll come back like you always did. But over time, that certainty begins to crumble. They start questioning themselves. Did I misjudge them? Did I lose my chance? Have they moved on without me? What started as confusion turns into something deeper, fear. You see, when you were constantly chasing, they knew they had you. They didn't need to work for your attention because you were always there. But now they're left wondering if they've lost something valuable. The more they think about it, the more that fear grows, and they begin to panic. You've taken back your power, and that shift in dynamic makes them feel uncertain, vulnerable, and insecure. The beauty of this moment is that you're no longer feeding into their need for control. You've stopped giving them the validation they once relied on, and in doing so, you've shown them that you don't need them to feel whole. Now they're the ones feeling the void, and that fear of losing you, the fear they never thought they'd experience, starts to consume them. Here's your affirmation. I am in control of my life. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know that the fear you once felt has shifted. You're no longer afraid of losing them because you've gained something much more valuable, yourself. And as the fear settles on their side, remember, this isn't about revenge, it's about balance. Stay with me, because the next phase is when they start to see your true worth. Phase 8. The realization of your worth. This realization doesn't come from some grand epiphany. It creeps up on them slowly. They might see someone else and realize the connection isn't the same. They might look through old messages or replay memories in their head, realizing just how much value you brought into their life. It's in the little things they start to miss, your kindness, your patience, the way you supported them without asking for anything in return. Now, with you gone, they're left facing the reality that what they once had with you is something they can't easily find elsewhere. For you, this is a moment of clarity. You start to see the power of your decision to walk away, to reclaim your worth. What they're feeling now is a direct result of you refusing to be taken for granted. And while they may be realizing your worth, you've already known it all along. This phase is not just about them coming to terms with what they lost. It's about you standing firm in your knowledge that you are valuable with or without them. The power they once had to define your worth is gone, and now they're left grappling with the consequences of their own blindness. Whether you're in a relationship or trying to attract someone new, this phase hits them hard. They may start trying to reconnect, sending small messages, or trying to rekindle old conversations. They might even apologize, hinting at how much they miss you, how much they regret not appreciating you when they had the chance. But here's where your strength comes into play. You don't fall back into old patterns. You've come too far to let their realization pull you back into the cycle of seeking validation. Instead, you keep focusing on yourself, on your growth. Let their realization be a reminder of how much power you've taken back. They are finally seeing what was always there, your worth. But that doesn't mean you run back into their arms. They're realizing they can't take you for granted anymore. But this time, it's on your terms. Here's your affirmation. My worth was never lost. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know you've always known your value, even when they didn't. And remember, this is a turning point. They're seeing your worth, but that doesn't mean your journey is over. There's one more step, and it's the most important one. Stay with me, because the next phase is when you emerge as the new unstoppable version of yourself, the one they never saw coming. Phase 9. The new you emerges. As you reach this final phase, something incredible happens. The new you emerges. You've gone through the fear, the doubt, the struggle of reclaiming your power, and now you've come out the other side transformed. You're not the same person who was once caught up in chasing their attention, desperate for their validation. You've grown, you've evolved, and now you stand in your full strength, fully aware of your worth, with a newfound sense of independence. This is the moment where everything becomes clear. You're no longer defined by them, by their opinion of you, or by whether or not they finally realize what they lost. The most important realization here is that you define yourself. You have built a version of yourself that is independent, strong, and thriving. You've stopped relying on someone else to make you feel whole. And in doing so, you've become someone who commands respect, attention, and admiration. At this point, they will likely try to come back into your life. They've gone through their own journey, shock, confusion, fear, and now they've realized your true worth. They may reach out, offering apologies, showing regret for how they treated you, and hinting at a desire to reconnect. This is where you're faced with a decision. Do you embrace your independence and keep moving forward, or do you accept them back into your life? If you choose to embrace your independence, you're stepping fully into the new version of yourself, one who no longer needs their validation or presence to feel complete. You're making the conscious choice to prioritize yourself, your growth, and your future. By doing so, you're affirming that your happiness and self-worth aren't tied to someone else. You've taken the journey, and now you get to live it fully on your terms. However, if you decide to accept them back, it's important that you do so from a place of strength and independence, not desperation. This is not about falling back into old patterns or giving them the same access to you as before. You've changed, and so has the dynamic. You are no longer someone who will settle for less than you deserve. Here's your final affirmation. I am unstoppable. Say it, believe it, and write it in the comments. Let them know you've become someone they can't ignore, and that you're ready to take on the world as your truest, most powerful self. You've done the work. You've reclaimed your worth. You've stepped into your power. Now go out and show the world just how unstoppable you truly are.